but now it is used as the club of the Cabinet of Ministers. A special club for our members of the government. The next one you see is the National Bank of Ukraine. Now it combines two buildings. The first one is it was built in 1830s, and the next one, which is really very beautiful, it was built later. In 1905, 1935, the presidential palace on the right. You see, it's a typical like Venetian Renaissance. The two stories, they were built in 1905, and 30 years later it was extended. But this is very neatly. The proportion is, of course, not the classical, but it looks really good. And the buildings on the right, it's a different architecture, mid-1930s, as we call it, Stalin type, the Stalin style, because Kiev became the capital of Ukraine only in 1934. Before that, since 1920 until 1934, the capital was in Kharkov, and then when the capital was moved here, some majestic-looking imperial-style buildings had to be erected for the bureaucrats, party leaders, and other important people at that time. They look a little bit dark, of course, because the traditional architecture is quite light, quite bright, but anyway, just the sign of the time. And now we'll go to the main street in this district, although this street is also important: presidential palace, the National Bank, but the next we are to see is the Ukrainian Parliament, the Supreme Council of Ukraine, which is, it was built in 1936. When Kiev became the capital of Ukraine. This area is called Lipki, and Lipki is a Ukrainian word which means linden trees, because there used to be linden wood, but now it's only in the place name, and it has always been quite a very important area for aristocrats and high officials to settle there. No wonder then all the government buildings like the Parliament, Presidential Palace, the Central Bank, as well as the Cabinet of Ministers are all located in this area. This is indeed the capital of Ukraine, is here. And you may see the classical and Renaissance buildings on both sides, but they're quite new. They were built barely 100 years ago, 1910, 1912. That's because they used to belong to the most wealthiest industrialists of the time. The main produce was agriculture, and Ukraine and Kiev area was especially renowned for sugar and grain supply. Due to suitable soils, very fertile and ideal climate, Ukraine, or at that time it was called the southwest district of the Russian Empire, it supplied up to 60% of sugar consumed in the entire Russian Empire. So that is why it was like a bonanza, because industrialists could make fortunes very, very quickly, and that is why Kiev attracted as a magnet. And Parliament, a small constitution square, followed by a park, where this road just goes parallel to the river, and the parks along the river stretch up to 15 kilometers along the river bank. They are, of course, interrupted by some developed area. Kiev is a very green town. The area 830 square kilometers, of which about 60% is covered by forest or forested land, and only 40% of the official territory of Kiev is city proper, the buildings. So we're very lucky to have a lot of green belts. A concert hall in the cultural center of the Ukrainian army. There is such an institution like that. The Ukrainian army also has a cultural center, and the Chinese embassy was the only one protester. I think the common topic for protests in front of the Chinese embassy is the abuse of human rights, and especially the lack of religious freedom in China. Falun Gong is just a sect, like here but the crowd is not too large, only one person. And very gradually, this park is virtually our unseen line between the aristocratic part and the military part. And the evidence is on the left, is the mid-19th century fortress built in the time of the Russian Emperor Nicholas I. Nicholas I, when he became the Russian Emperor, there were some international disputes, and he feared a war with Austria and a war with Turkey. But when this fortress was completed, all the international tension was resolved, and that is why there was a joke at that time that so much resources are used for what? For a small bureaucratic office. But anyway, it is like here. So there was a fortress, and there was a band, just like that somewhere. There was a ban to build this area. That is why most buildings are from the early 19th century. So it's park of following is the park. It's called the Park of Eternal Glory because of the war obelisk to heroes in war, and it's here that there is a very beautiful view and landing with a breathtaking vista of the river, of the newest part of Kiev, which also appeared 60 years ago. And on this part of the river you will see the oldest Orthodox monastery in this part of the world, the Kiev Monastery, which was founded 961 years ago.
So we can get out.